Captain Li Wu gripped the command rail as reality itself seemed to bend around them. The bridge of the starship New Seoul hummed with energy that made the air taste like lightning. Outside the massive viewport, 50,000 human vessels materialized from nowhere, their sleek black hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about physics. "Temporal displacement complete," announced Navigation Officer Kim. So, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. "All fleets report successful arrival at designated coordinates." Li Wu nodded, watching as human ships appeared simultaneously across every major star system in the galaxy. The Vex crystalline empire's homeworlds, the Collective's hive clusters, the ethereal house's energy nebulae. Humanity had returned to all of them at once. After 48,000 years of silence, they were no longer alone in the darkness between stars. The communication array crackled to life. "Captain, we're receiving priority transmissions from the Galactic Council. They're panicking." On the main screen, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was pure chaos. Crystalline Vex lords towered over smaller species, their bodies pulsing with angry red light. The writhing mass of the Collective's hive mind representatives twisted and churned like a living ocean of flesh and metal. Ethereal beings flickered in and out of visible spectrum, their panic causing reality distortions around them. Ambassador Park Jin stood calmly in the center of it all, his simple human form somehow commanding more attention than any of the alien powers. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Park Jin said, his words flowing in perfect galactic standard, despite the fact that no human had spoken to aliens for millennia. "We come in peace. We seek only to reclaim our place among the stars." A Vex overlord's crystalline body flared with skeptical energy. "Impossible! Humans are extinct. The archives show they vanished during the Age of Chaos." Park Jin smiled, the expression somehow both gentle and terrifying. "We were never extinct. We simply went away to learn." The response was immediate and hostile. 3 Vex dreadnoughts, each the size of a small moon, powered their reality-warping weapons and moved to intercept the human vessels near Proxima Station. Their crystalline hulls gleamed with malevolent purpose as they prepared to demonstrate why the Vex had ruled their sector for 10,000 years. Commander Kim Hai stood on the bridge of the destroyer Incheon, watching the alien warships approach. Her crew looked nervous, but she simply smiled. It was the kind of smile that had once made enemy generals surrender without firing a shot. "Sir," her weapons officer called out, "they're charging their quantum disruptors. Those things can tear apart entire planets." "Let them," Kim Hai replied calmly. "Show them why they shouldn't." The Vex fired first, unleashing beams of pure destruction that could unmake matter at the atomic level. The energy struck the space where the human ships had been hovering just moments before, but the ships were no longer there. They had simply vanished. The alien commander's confusion was visible even across species barriers. Their sensors showed nothing. No heat signatures, no quantum disturbances, no trace that the human vessels had ever existed. Then impossibly the ships reappeared, not in front of the Vex fleet but behind them, positioned perfectly to target their unshielded engine cores. No shots were fired. The message was crystal clear. Admiral Choi Min stood on the command deck of humanity's flagship, the massive battleship Sol Prime. Around him, holographic displays showed similar scenes playing out across the galaxy. Human ships appearing and disappearing at will, bypassing shields that had protected alien civilizations for millennia, demonstrating technology that treated the laws of physics like friendly suggestions. "Sir," Communications Officer Yang Su reported, her voice tight with suppressed excitement. "We're receiving transmissions from every major power in the galaxy. They're demanding to know our intentions, our capabilities, everything." The alien chatter filled the bridge. Vex overlords screamed threats in their crystalline language. Collective hive nodes buzzed with confused data streams. Ethereal houses whispered in frequencies that made reality shimmer. All of them were afraid, and fear made them dangerous. Choi, Min had fought in humanity's last great war before the Exodus. He remembered what fear could make civilizations do, but he also remembered why humanity had left in the first place and why they had chosen to return now. "Tell them," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of 50,000 years of preparation, "that we've come home." The words rippled across the galaxy through quantum communication networks, translated into 1,000 alien languages. Simple words that carried a promise and a warning. Humanity had not returned as conquerors or destroyers. They had returned as something far more dangerous to the established order. They had returned as gardeners, ready to tend their garden once again. Dr. Seo Han walked through the vast halls of the Galactic Library, her footsteps echoing against crystalline walls that stretched up into darkness. Around her, alien scholars huddled in nervous groups, their various appendages, tentacles, and energy forms trembling as they watched the human woman casually access archives that had been sealed for millennia. The library itself was a marvel. Massive space station built inside a hollowed-out moon, filled with the accumulated knowledge of 10,000 civilizations. But Seohan moved through it like she owned the place, her fingers dancing over control panels that responded to her touch despite being designed for entirely different species. "Impossible," whispered a Zephyrian librarian, its gas-form body swirling with agitation. "Those archives require quantum-encrypted access codes that change every nanosecond." Seo Han glanced over with a slight smile. "Only if you don't know the master key." She pressed her palm against what looked like solid metal, and the wall melted away like water, revealing chambers that hadn't been opened in 30,000 years. Inside, holographic displays flickered to life, showing fragments of history that the current galactic powers had tried very hard to forget. Ancient star charts showed human colonies scattered across the galaxy like seeds. Battle reports described a species called Terrans, who had somehow appeared everywhere at once, bringing both incredible technology and impossible kindness. "Look at this," Seo Han called out, her voice carrying genuine excitement. A three-dimensional map materialized in the air, showing the galaxy as it had been during the Age of Chaos. Hundreds of species were locked in endless wars, entire systems burned to ash, billions dying in conflicts that served no purpose except to feed the hunger for power. Then the map changed. Human ships appeared, not as conquerors but as healers. They stopped wars by simply standing between the combatants. They shared technology freely. They turned desert worlds into gardens and transformed toxic atmospheres into breathable air. "We were there," she said softly, watching as alien scholars pressed closer despite their fear. "We tried to help. But power corrupts, and you weren't ready for what we offered." Meanwhile, across the galaxy at Diplomatic Station Omega, Counselor Lim Na was giving the performance of several lifetimes. The massive space station orbited a neutral star, its halls filled with representatives from every major galactic power. They had come to study the returned humans, to find weaknesses, to understand what threat humanity might pose. Instead, they found miracles. The collective's ambassador, a writhing mass of organic machinery and neural interfaces, had been dying from quantum poisoning. Its biomechanical systems were failing, leaving it in agony that transcended species barriers. Lim Na approached the creature without hesitation, ignoring the warnings from security forces that the collective's touch could assimilate organic beings. She placed her hand gently on the alien's metallic carapace. Energy flowed from her fingers, not destructive force, but pure healing light that made the air itself seem to sing. The ambassador's death spasms stopped. Its damaged systems regenerated. Within moments, it was completely healthy. How? The creature buzzed through its translation unit, its multiple voices harmonizing in amazement. "Nanomedicine evolved to the cellular level," Lim Na explained casually, as if she hadn't just performed what every alien present considered a divine miracle. "We learned to work with biology instead of against it." Next, she approached the station's central computer core, a quantum processing system the size of a building that required teams of specialists to operate. Without warning, she pressed her hand against the main interface. Her eyes rolled back, showing only white, and suddenly she was everywhere in the system at once. "Diagnostic complete," she announced, her voice somehow coming from every speaker. On the station simultaneously. "Your quantum matrices are running at 60% efficiency. I've optimized them. You should see improvement within the hour." The alien technicians stared in horror as their most advanced systems began upgrading themselves, guided by a human consciousness that treated their cutting-edge technology like a simple calculator. But it was the gravity demonstration that truly broke their understanding of physics. Limnar gestured casually, and the massive diplomatic table, solid metal weighing several tons, simply floated into the air. She spun it gently with one finger, then made it dance through the room like a feather. Gravitational manipulation to the quantum level, she explained to the stunned audience. "We learn to ask nicely instead of forcing." An ethereal house representative, its energy form flickering with what could only be described as anxiety, finally found the courage to speak. "How long have you been preparing for this return?" Limnar smiled, and for a moment every being in the room felt the weight of vast time and infinite patience. 50,000 years, she replied simply. "We had a lot to learn." The implications hit them like a physical blow. While their civilizations had risen and fallen, fought wars and built empires, humanity had been out there in the darkness, growing, learning, evolving. They hadn't just survived, they had transcended. Captain Yundo's voice crackled through the communication networks as his survey ships completed their scans of the human fleet. "Each vessel carries between 2 and 5 million humans in temporal stasis," he reported, his words causing panic across alien command centers. "They're not refugees or colonists. They're researchers, engineers, teachers, doctors, entire civilizations' worth of knowledge and experience." The math was terrifying. 50,000 ships, each carrying millions of humans who had spent millennia perfecting their crafts. Humanity hadn't just returned, they had returned as gods among mortals, bringing knowledge that made the galaxy's greatest achievements look like children's toys, and they were still arriving. More ships materialized every hour, emerging from folds in space-time that shouldn't have existed. The galaxy watched in growing fear as humanity revealed the true scope of their return, realizing that everything they thought they knew about, power, technology, and the nature of reality itself was about to change forever. The collective made their move at dawn, ship time. Transport ship. Busan was carrying civilian researchers to the outer rim, seemingly defenseless as it drifted through the neutral zone. The hive mind saw an opportunity, capture humans alive, assimilate their consciousness, learn their secrets. From the inside, bioneural parasites, invisible to most sensors, swarmed through the ship's ventilation systems like living smoke. These creatures were the collective's most feared weapon, microscopic horrors that burrowed into nervous systems and rewired brains to serve the hive mind. They had conquered entire species this way, turning proud civilizations into mindless drones within hours. Chief Engineer Baysol was working in the engine room when the first wave hit. The parasites descended on her like a living cloud, trying to burrow through her skin and into her bloodstream. She didn't even flinch. "Bridge, this is engineering," she said calmly into her communicator, while parasites literally bounced off, her skin like raindrops. "Collective bioassault in progress. Immunity protocols are holding perfectly." Throughout the ship, the same scene played out. Parasites that could dissolve through military-grade armor simply couldn't penetrate human skin. When they tried to enter through natural openings, they were instantly destroyed by immune systems that treated them like common bacteria. But the real shock came when the parasites tried to establish neural links. The moment they made contact with human brain tissue, something extraordinary happened. Instead of the humans being assimilated into the collective, the hive mind network began to crash. "What's happening?" screamed the collective's ship commanders as their shared consciousness started fragmenting. Individual drones suddenly found themselves thinking their own thoughts for the first time in centuries. The unified voice of billions became a chaotic babble of confused individuals. Baysol watched her readings with scientific fascination. "Neural architecture completely incompatible," she reported. "Their control systems can't process human consciousness patterns. It's like trying to run alien software on hardware that doesn't recognize the programming language. The collective's assault had backfired spectacularly. Instead of gaining new drones, they had lost thousands of existing ones as the cascade failure spread through their network. Ships drifted powerless as their crews struggled to remember how to function as individuals. Across the galaxy, the Vex Empire decided to demonstrate why they had ruled their sector for 10 millennia. Reality warping technology was their greatest achievement. Crystalline matrices that could literally rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas. They had used it to turn enemy fleets into harmless space dust and transform entire planets into crystal gardens. 5 Vex dreadnoughts surrounded the human settlement on New Kyoto, a small world that humans were terraforming into a garden paradise. The crystalline ships glowed with malevolent energy as they prepared to demonstrate their power. "Initiating reality cascade," announced the Vex commander, his voice echoing through crystal corridors. "Converting matter to crystal matrix in 3:1. The energy beams struck the planet's surface with enough force to reshape continents, but instead of transforming into crystal, the human settlements simply weren't affected. The reality warping energy rolled off protective barriers like water off glass. Colonel Han B stood in the defense center, watching calmly as readings showed the Vex attack failing completely. "Null field generators at full power," she reported to her team. "Their reality manipulation can't function in areas where we control the fundamental constants." The Vex couldn't believe what they were seeing. Their most powerful weapons were simply being ignored. The humans had somehow learned to say no to reality itself. "Impossible," the Vex commander raged, his crystalline form pulsing with frustrated energy. "Nothing can resist the great crystal's power." Han B's response came through communication channels that the Vex couldn't block or decrypt. "Your technology forces reality to change. Ours politely asks if change is necessary. Reality prefers good manners." While the galaxy's major powers were learning the hard way that humans were untouchable, the real revolution was happening on countless worlds they had never bothered to notice. These were the forgotten places, slave worlds, prison planets, experimental sites where the strong did whatever they wanted to the weak. Captain O'Day materialized his strike team directly onto the surface of Kepler-9, bypassing orbital defenses that had kept the slave farms isolated for centuries. The world was a nightmare of industrial agriculture, where sentient beings were treated like crops, harvested for biological materials that kept the galaxy's elite healthy and beautiful. "Liberation protocol is active," O'Day announced to his team as they moved through fields where thousands of enslaved aliens worked under the constant threat of punishment. The facility's guards, cybernetic enforcers built for cruelty, moved to intercept the humans. The battle lasted exactly 17 seconds. Human weapons didn't just destroy the enforcement drones, they somehow convinced the machines that cruelty was inefficient. The reprogrammed guards began freeing slaves instead of controlling them. Meanwhile, Commander Song-A was dismantling Vega 7, a prison world where entire species were kept for the entertainment of sadistic overlords. The planet's defense grid was legendary. Automated systems that could track and eliminate any unauthorized presence within seconds of arrival. Song-A walked through the defenses like they weren't there. "Quantum stealth engaged," she reported casually, as laser grids fired at empty air while she passed invisible between the beams. "Defense AI is being offered better employment opportunities." Within hours, the prison world systems had decided that keeping people captive was less interesting than helping them build new lives. Cell doors opened. Transport ships arrived to take former prisoners to worlds where they could start over. The guards found themselves out of work, but somehow not upset about it. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. Wherever there was oppression, humans appeared to end it. They didn't conquer territories or demand tribute. They simply made it impossible for the strong to abuse the weak. General Ryu Jun stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, his simple human form somehow more intimidating than any alien warlord. The council chamber was in chaos as reports poured in of their carefully maintained systems of control collapsing overnight. "You're destroying the natural order," screamed a Vex overlord, its crystalline body fracturing with rage. "The strong have always ruled the weak. It's how the universe works." Ryujun looked at the assembled powers with something that might have been pity. "We're not here to rule you," he announced, his words carrying across every communication network. "In the galaxy. We're here to free everyone you've oppressed." The old order began to crumble. Species that had been enslaved for millennia were suddenly free. Worlds that had served as private playgrounds for the elite were becoming independent. Colonies. The careful balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable through oppression was dissolving like sand in rain, and humanity was just getting started. The council chambers fell silent as Ambassador Kang Yu stepped forward, his simple human form commanding attention from beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. The massive holographic displays around the chamber flickered to life, showing images that made even the most ancient aliens gasp in recognition. "You want to know who we are," Kang Yu said, his voice carrying across the chamber without amplification. "Let me show you." The first image materialized above them, a young galaxy, raw and violent, where primitive species fought endless wars over resources and territory. Then came the second image, and the chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Human ships, sleek and graceful, appeared at the edges of dying worlds. But these weren't the advanced vessels of today. They were simpler, more primitive, yet somehow more beautiful. 50,000 years ago, we were young too, Kang Yu continued. We had just learned to reach the stars, and we found a galaxy tearing itself apart. So we did what humans do. We tried to help. The holographic records played like a documentary of forgotten history. Human terraforming ships turning dead rocks into garden worlds. Human medical vessels curing plagues that had ravaged entire species. Human teachers showing primitive civilizations how to harness clean energy instead of strip mining their planets to death. "We were your gardeners," Kang Yu said softly. "We seeded worlds with life, guided evolution when species hit dead ends, nurtured young civilizations like worried parents watching their children take first steps." A Vex overlord's crystalline form flared with angry light. "Lies! The Vex Empire has ruled for 10,000 years. We conquered this sector through our own strength." The hologram shifted, showing the truth. The Vex had been a dying species, their crystalline bodies failing as their home star went nova. Human engineers had taught them how to transfer their consciousness into more stable crystal matrices. Human scientists had shown them how to manipulate reality at the quantum level. What the Vex thought was their greatest achievement had been humanity's gift to save them from extinction. "You were dying," Kang Yu said gently. "We gave you immortality. We hoped you would use it to help others the way we had helped you." The collective's mass of writhing biomechanical components seemed to shudder. "The hive mind is eternal. We evolved beyond individual consciousness." Another hologram appeared, showing the species that would become the collective. They had been ravaged by a mental plague that left them unable to connect with each other, dying alone in isolated madness. Human biotechnology had given them the ability to share thoughts, to heal their broken minds by linking them together. "We gave you unity to cure your loneliness," Kang Yu said. "We never meant for you to use it to force others into slavery." One by one, the holographic records revealed the truth about every major power in the galaxy. The ethereal houses had been primitive energy beings barely conscious until human technology taught them how to manipulate electromagnetic fields and achieve higher dimensional awareness. The Serpentine Empire had been simple reptiles until human genetic engineering helped them develop intelligence and space travel. The Machine Collective had been failed AI experiments until human programmers taught them how to think and feel. "Every major civilization in this galaxy exists because we helped you," Kang Yu said, his words hitting the alien powers like physical blows. "You are all our children, our students, our greatest successes, and our greatest failures." Director Moon. Ree stood up from her seat in the human delegation, her age-lined face showing both sadness and determination. "We watched you grow. We were so proud at first. The Vex used their crystal technology to create beautiful art worlds. The collective shared knowledge freely across the galaxy. The ethereal houses became teachers and philosophers." She paused, and the chamber's lights dimmed as if responding to her emotion. "But power corrupts. Slowly you forgot the lessons we taught you. You started using your gifts to control others instead of helping them. The galaxy became a place of oppression and fear. The holographic records showed the transformation. Garden. Worlds becoming slave farms. Crystal art becoming crystal prisons. The hive mind's unity becoming forced assimilation. Species that had been saved from extinction now drove others to extinction for profit and pleasure. So we left, Moonree continued. We couldn't watch our children become monsters. We hoped that without us you would learn to be better. We were wrong. Fleet Admiral Jung So stepped forward, his weathered face showing the weight of 50,000. Years of preparation. We didn't just leave. We spent every moment of those 50 millennia preparing for this return. We developed technology that makes us effectively immortal by your standards. We learned to manipulate reality at levels you can't imagine. We became, by any measure you might use, gods. The alien powers shifted nervously. They had seen demonstrations of human power, but hearing it stated so plainly was terrifying. But here's the thing about humans, Jung So said, a slight smile playing at his lips. We remained human. We could have come back as conquerors, as destroyers, as the vengeful gods you probably deserve. Instead, we came back as parents, he gestured, to the holographic displays, which now showed human ships freeing slaves, healing damaged worlds, and offering knowledge freely to anyone who wanted to learn. You were our children once. We're disappointed in what you became, but we won't abandon. You again. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some aliens were crying, actual tears from species that hadn't experienced genuine emotion in millennia. Others were raging, their power structures crumbling as they realized their entire civilization was built on gifts they had perverted. Few were laughing, finally understanding why their most advanced weapons had failed against human technology. "What do you want from us?" whispered an ethereal house representative, its energy form flickering with what could only be described as shame. Kang Yu looked at the assembled powers of the galaxy, civilizations that had ruled through fear and oppression for millennia, now revealed as children who had forgotten their way home. "We want you to remember what we taught you," he said simply. "We want you to become what you were meant to be. And if you can't or won't," he let the words hang in the air, and every being in the chamber understood the unspoken threat. Humanity had returned not as conquerors but as gardeners, and gardeners sometimes had to pull weeds to let the flowers grow. The galaxy would never be the same. The transformation began within hours of humanity's revelation. Across the galaxy, massive, human engineering ships materialized above worlds that had been written off as dead for centuries. These weren't warships, but vessels of creation. Floating cities filled with scientists, artists, and dreamers who had spent 50,000 years perfecting the art of bringing life to lifeless places. Engineer Corps leader Shin Da stood on the bridge of the terraforming ship, New Genesis, watching as her crews descended to the surface of Kepler 452c. The world had been strip-mined to death by the Vex Empire, its atmosphere poisoned, its oceans turned to acid. It was considered beyond, saving by every galactic power. "Atmospheric processors are online," reported her second-in-command, Engineer Li Min. "Nanobotic swarms are neutralizing toxins at the molecular level." Shinda smiled as she watched the readings change in real time. The poisoned yellow sky was slowly clearing, revealing blue patches that hadn't been seen in 3,000 years. "Seed the clouds with water vapor generators. I want to see rain by tomorrow." But the real magic happened when the soil reclamation drones activated. These weren't simple machines. They were living ecosystems in mechanical form, carrying thousands of bacterial strains that could break down industrial waste and transform it into rich earth. Within days, green shoots were pushing through ground that had been barren rock just a week before. The former Vex overlords watched in amazement as their dead conquest became a garden world more beautiful than anything they had ever created with their reality-warping technology. Meanwhile, biologist Quan Mi was performing what could only be called miracles on the research station, Darwin's Dream. The massive ship orbited the ruins of what had once been the galaxy's greatest wildlife preserve before the collective had harvested every living thing for their biomechanical experiments. Genetic resurrection sequence initiated, she announced to her team as they worked in laboratories that looked more like temples than scientific facilities. Ancient DNA samples, preserved in quantum storage for millennia, were being carefully reconstructed and improved upon. The first success was a creature that looked like a cross between a butterfly and a small dragon, a species that had been extinct for 2,000 years. As it fluttered around the biochamber on gossamer wings, its scales shifting through colors that didn't have names, the assembled scientists cheered like children seeing their first rainbow. Each resurrection carries forward not just the original species, but improvements, Quan Mi explained to the former collective drones who had volunteered to help. Better immunity, longer life, greater intelligence. We're not just bringing back the past, we're creating a better future. Soon ships were departing Darwin's dream, carrying genetic seeds to worlds across the galaxy. Extinct forests began growing again. Vanished ocean creatures swam in newly cleaned seas. The galaxy was literally coming back to life. But perhaps the most important work was being done by teacher Kim Rowe, who established schools on every major world where former enemies could learn to work together. The sight of a young Vex crystal child playing with a collective biohybrid, while an ethereal house energy being taught them both mathematics, would have been impossible just months before. The key is starting with the children, Kim Rowe explained to human educators across the galaxy. Adults are set in their ways, but children see possibilities instead of problems. Her flagship school on New Terra Station had become legendary. Former slave world refugees sat next to the children of galactic overlords, all learning the same lessons about cooperation, kindness, and the strength that comes from lifting others up instead of pushing them down. The political transformation was just as dramatic. The Galactic Council dissolved peacefully after a final session where every member species voted to create something better. The Cooperative Federation that took its place wasn't just a new name, it was a completely different way of thinking about galactic governance. Every species gets one vote, regardless of size or power, announced the Federation's first president, a humble teacher from a world that had been enslaved for centuries. Decisions are made not by who can threaten the most destruction, but by who can offer the most benefit to everyone. The former galactic powers found new purposes that suited them better than conquest. The Vex Empire discovered that their crystal technology was perfect for creating beautiful structures and artistic masterpieces. Instead of reality-warping weapons, they built crystal gardens that grew like living things and sang with the music of the spheres. The collective learned to balance unity with individuality. Instead of forced assimilation, they offered connection to lonely beings across the galaxy. A voluntary network where individuals could share experiences and knowledge while maintaining their own identity. The ethereal houses became teachers and guides, using their energy manipulation abilities to help other species develop psychic powers for healing and communication rather than control. Captain Park Sam stood on the observation deck of New Terra Station, the massive space city that had become the unofficial capital of the new galactic civilization. Through the transparent aluminum walls, he could see ships from 100 different worlds docked at the station's ports. Vex crystal ships sparkled like jewels. Collective biovessels pulsed with organic rhythms. Ethereal energy craft flickered between dimensions. But what caught his attention were the gardens below. In the station's vast central park, children from dozens of species played together, while human teachers watched with proud smiles. A young serpentine hatchling was helping a collective hybrid child learn to climb trees. Ethereal younglings were teaching gravity ball to refugees from the former slave worlds. "Look at them," Park Sam said to his companion, engineer Yusu, who had helped design the station's living systems. "They don't see differences, they just see friends." Yusu nodded, watching as a group of mixed-species children ran laughing through fountains that responded to their joy by creating rainbow patterns in the water. This is what we dreamed of 50,000 years ago, a galaxy where everyone belongs. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some of the old powers resisted change. Pirates and slavers tried to take advantage of the chaos. But wherever darkness tried to reassert itself, Human ships appeared to gently but firmly restore order. More importantly, the freed species of the galaxy were learning to protect each other. Former slaves became teachers. Rescued prisoners became healers. The galaxy was developing an immune system against cruelty and oppression. 1 year after humanity's return, Fleet Commander Lee Jun sat in his quarters aboard the flagship Eternal Hope, composing what would be the final report of Operation Homecoming. Through his viewport, he could see construction ships from 20 different species working together to build a memorial to the billions who had died during the dark ages of galactic history. Mission status: complete, he typed into the quantum communication array that would carry his words to human colonies across the galaxy. The children have remembered what we taught them. The garden is growing again. Our job as gardeners is done. Now we can simply enjoy watching the flowers bloom. He paused, looking out at a galaxy transformed. Where once there had been slave ships, now there were school ships. Where once there had been prison worlds, now there were art colonies. Where once there had been the endless cycle of conquest and oppression, now there was cooperation and growth. The galaxy has entered its true golden age, he continued, not through conquest or domination, but through the simple recognition that we are all connected, all valuable, all deserving of dignity and freedom.